We are about 1 month into the season. Time to overhaul your full team. Hopefully not, but we've got a whole bunch of recommendations for you with special guest Marty Tallman here on RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Vivid Seats. Hello and welcome, everybody, to the Saturday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Erik Halterman here, but I am not joined by Ryan Boyer. He is off this weekend. Instead, I've got a special guest, Marty Tallman, one of my league mates in Glarf. Marty, how's your season going so far? Are you in need of plenty of fab pickups this weekend, or is everything going well?
Outside of Glarf, everything is going actually very well. We'll get into it. But thank you, Erik, for having me on. Always excited to join the prestigious podcast of RotoWire. And excited to get into it.
Yeah, for sure. We will have our usual allotment of pickups later in the show. We've got our priority ads, our deep league ads. Not quite as many big pickups this week, at least on the prospect side, as there were last week. Those seem to come in waves, although we'll talk about certainly some of the bigger prospects who may still be out there. But as always, want to start with some of the news. And as usual, some of the news involves injured pitchers. We've got a potentially pretty big one here. Logan Gilbert exited his start Friday against the Marlins due to forearm tightness. Gilbert has had an excellent start to the season, and he had 3 perfect innings in this one yesterday. There were no signs that anything was up here. But while we don't know anything yet, and while I certainly wouldn't be making any drastic decisions, you got to be pretty worried about this one, given that it's a forearm issue, right?
Anytime that happens, you're scared. Especially he's probably your SP1 on every one of your teams if you do have him. So, like myself having way too much George Kirby, I would be afraid if you have Gilbert. Just a little bit. Not yet, but a little bit.
Would you be picking up the next man up in Seattle? I mean, we know it's one of the best places to pitch. Are you interested in whoever takes his spot?
I would like to wait and see. I'm a wait and see approach. I want to see 1 week before I would spend any fab on him or do a speculative ad. But as of right now, in theory, the Mariners have only 5 games next week. So he's going to give him an extra day or 2 to rest, and we'll see. Maybe all will be fine.
Yeah, I guess Emerson Hancock is a little bit safer potentially in his spot, but whether or not you want him, I'm not sure. We will, of course, have more updates on the Logan Gilbert situation. Would expect we hear something by Sunday there. But again, you're not dropping him unless we find out it's immediate surgery, and I don't think we're there yet. How about some more positive news? We had a save for David Bednar against the Dodgers, coming on to complete a spotless Paul Skeens start. It was the kind of box score you could expect to see in a playoff game in an alternate universe with a different owner for the Pirates, where they had a more respectable payroll. But good to see David Bednar back in the 9th inning. I mean, it was only going to take probably one to say he's good. In leagues where David Bednar is still out there, pick him up ahead of any of the relievers we're about to talk about today, right?
I agree. Yeah, pick him up right away. We knew Dennis Santana, that was going to be short-lived, if it all lived. But it's hard not to root for Bednar as a Pittsburgh homegrown guy. He's done really well since coming back. So I would pick him up if you have the opportunity.
The way that they had been managing that situation all along, it really just seemed like, even dating back to the offseason, right? The fact that they didn't bring in an obvious, proven closer alternative. They've managed this one as if they think David Bednar can get back. And, he's thrown 4 scoreless appearances since returning. He's got 7 strikeouts against 1 walk in 4 innings. Looks like he's back to me. The Yankees are in need of a similar rebound from their closer, Devin Williams. Well, I say their closer. Is he even still their closer? Aaron Boone said yesterday, after Williams blew a lead against the Blue Jays, when asked if Williams would benefit from moving to lower leverage situations, Aaron Boone said, "We'll see. We'll kind of talk through this stuff," is what he said. So that seems like, at least temporarily, Devin Williams might not be closing. Run out and get Luke Weaver? How much of a priority would he be?
Huge priority. But that being said, Devin Williams will be the closer again. Like they paid him all they got him on the squad. He's going to be their closer. He may take 1 or 2 outings off, see what Luke Weaver can do. But ultimately, even if Luke Weaver continues the 100% left on base strand rate that he has, Devin Williams will be back as the closer. He just needs to kind of, take a deep breath and relax a little bit, but he'll be fine.
So definitely not doing anything drastic, dropping Williams. I mean, are you confident enough that you'd throw out a buy low offer in a trading league, or is that too far?
I would actually be okay with that in a 12-team league. Why not? And then obviously, if any holds leagues, Luke Weaver's already picked up. Right. I have myself even in a 12-team league with holds, but nothing drastic. We will wait and see. This often happens in New York where, a player comes there for the first time. They have a couple bad outings. The city blows up. Aaron Boone's immediately on the spot to make a decision. Are you going to get rid of him or not? If this was Detroit, if this was all happening in Detroit, he would have another week or two before we would even think about this conversation. So if you have Devin Williams, you're not thrilled, but don't trade him. Hold him.
Fair enough. Let's move on to some injury updates for some previously injured pitchers. We've got a few to take care of here. Blake Snell is receiving an injection for his shoulder. He had an MRI that showed no new findings, but this is, of course, after he was already shut down from throwing after experiencing a setback while playing catch earlier in the week. So an injection, this is not the sort of thing you tend to get when everything is going pretty well, but I don't think there's anything actionable here with Snell yet, right? This is just yet more reason to worry if you drafted him.
This is the life of drafting Blake Snell.
Yep.
So there's always going to be a month or two where you're, you may be regretting why you did pick him up, but he's your ace for a reason. Hold, don't do anything drastic until we hear more. But at some point, like especially in a super shallow league, like in a 10-team league, and I tweeted this, like this is almost worst case scenario because you're in this holding pattern of like, do you hold them? Do you cut? And let's say if you're in an NFBC league, 12 or 15-team league, I mean, you pretty much have to hold them, but man, you don't know what's going to happen next. So it's a horrible spot to be in, but until we hear more, that's the spot you're going to have to stay because you drafted Blake Snell. This is always a possibility when you do that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's talk about Christopher Sanchez. We mentioned a forearm issue for Logan Gilbert at the start of the show. Christopher Sanchez had his a few days in advance of that. It was Tuesday that he left his start, but the news continues to trend in the right direction. This is one I am watching extremely closely as somebody who drafted Christopher Sanchez everywhere I could. And as a Phillies fan, this one is going to matter to me and my happiness for the rest of the year. And I'm not allowing myself to get too optimistic here. We know what happens with forearm injuries. They often lead to surgery. But with Christopher Sanchez, he felt fine the next day, and the team said, you don't need an MRI. You can play catch in a couple days, and if you check out fine then you'll continue to not need an MRI, and that happened. He played catch yesterday, checked out okay. The plan is for a bullpen session Sunday. If that bullpen session goes well, he's probably not going on the IL. I mean, are we going to be okay here? I still don't know if I can start him next week, but are we going to be okay?
Anytime you see that much of an increase in velocity, you have to be a little worried. And that's I think that's part of why Sanchez has been so dominant this year is because he has taken his velocity to that next level. And when that happens, we have seen that injuries may increase as well. So it's great that when he throws the ball from 45 feet, he feels fine. We'll see when he's throwing as hard as he possibly can, in a 3-2 count.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I probably shouldn't get too excited about this catch. The bullpen session will tell us something.
Yeah.
I mean, we always need to pay attention to what is the pitcher physically doing right now. And if he's able to throw a bullpen session, that indicates he's not that hurt. But we need to find out whether he makes it through the bullpen session. If that's coming Sunday, I worry we might not have word until Tuesday. And so if that's the case, your lineup decisions may have already had to have been made. I'm comfortable not starting Sanchez next week, almost regardless of what happens. But We'll see. Maybe I'll be able to start him the week after that. We'll see. More key injuries here. Cole Reagans is dealing with a groin issue. He left to start Thursday against the Rockies, but Friday we got the news that it was diagnosed as a mild left groin strain. So that sounds like something where if he does need to hit the IL, probably close to a minimum length stay. Nothing too much to worry about here.
That's the way I read it as well. But anytime you do hear groin strain, it's not, you don't love hearing that, because that is a very that could get worse quickly. If you do strain that again. Speaking as someone, I have him in probably half of my league, so I'm very, very closely monitoring this. But once I saw that diagnosis, I took a deep breath. He'll be fine.
Yeah, seems like it. Another pitcher who has some positive news recently, Eury Perez, is set to begin his rehab assignment with Single A Jupiter today, Saturday, as he works his way back from Tommy John surgery, which he underwent in April of last year. If he's beginning his rehab assignment now, I mean, you figure it's going to be a long rehab assignment, but even if it's a full month, that means he's going to make his season debut in late May. I certainly was not drafting Eury Perez as if he was going to return in May. This has to be pretty good news, right?
And when I saw this news, the first thing I did was I hopped on a TGFBI to see the rostership, and he is 0% rostered, and I cannot pick him up in my league. So
yeah,
most are gonna have to wait until he does make his debut. But if you are in a league where you can pick him up now and you have the ability to stash him, which I don't know, after going all of these over all these injuries for starting pitchers, I don't know how many people have a slot. They can just wait a month or 6 weeks for somebody. But if you can, I would.
Yeah. Certainly the upside is there that he's worth a longer stash than I think some other players, I would say. We've got a couple more quick injury updates to hit here. First, we got Lucas Giolito. He is set to return on Wednesday, returning from a hamstring strain technically, but also, of course, from elbow surgery. He hasn't pitched since 2023. What sort of expectations do we have for Lucas Giolito?
Now, that is a great question. When Lucas Giolito is 100% healthy, I don't know who we're going to get. So coming off such a long injury and coming off then a hamstring itself, if you have him, I wouldn't start him. And if he's on your waiver wire, I would wait until we see an outing or two.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess in deeper leagues, he's going to have a rotation spot. So grab him and then maybe don't use him right away and see. But potentially a difference maker there in Boston. It's been some time since he's really been at that level, though. How about we've got Luke Keyshaw, who was not the most exciting prospect to pick up this past week when we had a run of prospects who all debuted at the same time, but he was certainly one that people were somewhat interested in, and he started off well with a hit in 6 straight games, and then unfortunately in his 7th game, he was hit in the forearm by a pitch and suffered a broken right forearm. So unfortunately, I don't think there's enough upside here that he needs to stick around on any rosters. We may talk about some of the fallout from this later, unless there's anybody you want to highlight here as go grab him as Luke Keyshaw's replacement.
Yeah, I mean, he's a drop everywhere. We can get into it later, but there's no one that immediately strikes out or who stands out on the Twins at this moment as they're flailing offensively.
Yeah, flailing indeed. I guess that just creates more opportunities for somebody to maybe come through. We'll see what happens there. Finally, one last bit of news. We have Garrett Mitchell exited yesterday's game with an oblique injury. He is somebody who was a popular sleeper, but wasn't doing very much. Hit 206, 0 homers, did have 3 steals, but he was placed on the IL this morning with a left oblique strain. I'm pretty sure we can just cut Garrett Mitchell. Is that true? I mean, obliques tend to be more than a month, and even though he was a popular sleeper, he wasn't necessarily one of the level where you have to hold on and build your team around him, right?
Yeah, I drafted him only in one spot, TGFBI. It was either between him or Joe Adell. I think I made the right decision. I don't know. I think as of
Yeah,
now, it's
I
fine.
don't even know.
I don't know if either of them were the correct decision. I needed an outfielder at the time, and that's the two that stood out to me. Can I interest you in Sal Frelick? I don't think
Yeah,
so. Maybe a little
no,
bit. Jake Bowers.
no.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
I
the
don't know if there's
Brewers,
anybody
another
coming
team.
up, but yeah.
Yeah, Brewers, another team where they just kind of have a bunch of guys who might be all right. So we'll see if they give enough of the playing time to one person that he matters in deeper leagues. Not sure they will. We are going to move on to our main topic. As always on Saturday, we've got our priority fab ads and our deep league fab ads. We'll start with the priority guys right after this message from Vivid Seats, who reminds us that finally baseball is back. This MLB season, knock it out of the park with Vivid Seats and score great tickets to the biggest games of the year. Every fastball, every home run, and every eye-popping play of your favorite team live and in person. Plus, with Vivid Seats rewards, you earn rewards with every single purchase. Just buy 10 tickets, then cash in your credit toward your free 11th ticket. Talk about an easy win. And here's a pro reward tip. When buying tickets for your whole group, split the bill and make progress toward your free 11th ticket even faster. From behind the dugout to the upper deck, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all the 2025 games that matter to you. Just visit vividseats.com or download the app today. Vivid Seats, experience it live. See vividseats.com/rewards for terms and conditions. And welcome back to the Saturday Fab edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Erik Halterman here with guest host Marty Tallman. And we will have our usual allotment of priority ads to start the show, but I want to toss in a bonus guy, Nick Kurtz. We talked about him last week, and in many leagues, he's already shot up past that 50% ownership threshold, where we wouldn't talk about him on the Fab show. But in many NFBC leagues, this is going to be the big weekend to pick up Nick Kurtz. He was stashed ahead of time last week, right? He didn't actually get his call up until I think it was Wednesday. And my question to you is, just how crazy will the bidding be? Just how crazy should the bidding be on Nick Kurtz, who absolutely mashed over not a very large sample in the minors, but ever since being picked fourth overall last year, he's posted OPSs north of 1,000 in 12 games last year and in 20 games this year. So we've got a pretty traditional first base slugger. Looks like a really good player. Is he worth even bigger bids than Chandler Simpson went for, who is a worse player overall, but could single-handedly win you one category? Would you rather throw everything at Nick Kurtz?
Some of the bids were up to 600, right? For that's. I think I would go 150, maybe to 180. That would be the highest I'd go out of $1,000, fab budget. He didn't disappoint. I mean, his first hit was 102 or 112 miles an hour off the bat. It was the hardest hit ball of the night. And I think he was the sixth fastest player in athletics history to get drafted and called up so quickly. It only took him 283 days from the day he was drafted, it's pretty crazy. So with all that being said, do you want to spend 15 to 20% of your budget on a rookie who's played a week, who's really, really young?
Right.
If you need to do that, I guess you can go ahead. I think he'd be fine for your corner infield spot. I'm not going to break the bank. I don't even see myself bidding because I don't think I'll be able to get him. I don't think someone's going to put $180, $200 on him, and I'm out. So
yeah.
Well, how much
somebody might even put more?
Yeah.
I think that the way I would think of it is, if you think of your fab budget as, I'm always going to throw a lot of money at a prospect or two. If you're somebody who does like doing that, and you say, all right, well, I have $1,000, but 400 of it is going to be allotted towards top prospects. And if you haven't won one of them yet, and you always planned on trying to win one of them, I mean, Nick Kurtz is one of the top prospects who's going to come up this year. So spend most of that budget. If you say, I keep 600 of it for my normal daily use and 400 of it is to throw at prospects. All right, throw 350 at Nick Kurtz, whatever it is that you're comfortable with. I think that he deserves one of the bigger bids within that portion of your budget. But if, like you're saying, you don't really like throwing that much of your budget at guys who've only played a week anyway, then I think that makes sense. I think some people are saying in here he's going to go 300 plus or 35 to 40%. I think that might happen. And I think with what you're saying, if your approach to fab is, I just don't think that I can get everybody else I need if I'm throwing 40% of my budget as somebody
it's
unproven.
April 26th. Now, I will say this, though. I don't think they brought Kurtz up to sit. They're putting Rooker in the outfield. Right. Soderstrom's going to be first or DH, and they're going to kind of flip-flop back and forth. So with a lot of prospects, my main worry is, does he stay up for 3 weeks, struggle a little bit? They sent him down. They did that with Lawrence Butler, but they eventually did bring him back. I think you have at least a month of runway with him being called up right now. And if he does hit and you get 5 months of him, then he'll definitely be worth that. It's the unknown. It's hard to say, but you have to take a gamble. At some point in fab, you do have to take a gamble on someone with upside, and this could be one of those guys for sure.
Yep, and the fact that he's showing up in April means you get more for your $400 bid than you do on whatever pitching prospect comes up in mid-June, for example. So there's certainly an argument for it. I'll just throw out also the only yellowish flag that I've seen in Nick Kurtz's statistical record is that he did strike out 27% of the time in his 20 AAA games this year, which is neither a large sample nor a large strikeout problem, but it's something. And through 3 games, he struck out 4 times in 10 plate appearances. So if by the time the bidding comes around Sunday, and, he has 5 more strikeouts or something, and we're looking at that number still starting with a 4, then, all right, that might affect the bidding. That is the one area where there could be a weakness in his game, and it's present through a tiny sample of 3 games.
And if that does happen, then I would be more willing to put some money on him because I feel like you can get him at a better deal. Because let's say if he hits 2 home runs over the next 2 games, or if he hits just 1 home run, it's going to, $300 or more for sure.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Well, should we move on to another rookie who was picked up in some places last week? Probably, but not all of them, depending on whether or not you could stash. Agustin Ramirez. The news that he was coming up, I believe, happened right after our show last weekend. Agustin Ramirez is a very unique catching prospect because he can run. Well, sort of. If you look at his speed grades and you look at his sprint speed scores, they're actually not very impressive. But if you look at the fact that he does, in fact, run, then he does, in fact, run. He stole 22 bases in the minors last year. He stole 12 the year before that, and he's already attempted 2 steals this year, been caught once. This despite, again, 31st percentile sprint speed in his tiny sample of just a few sprints this week. He can also hit. He's not an elite hitter, but it was a 791 OPS in 19 games this year, 845 last year. Shows good plate discipline, doesn't strike out too much, walk rates in the double digits, 25 homers last year too. There's a lot to like with Agustin Ramirez. It's pointed out here that his defense isn't great, but the competition behind the plate in Miami is not very good. He just has to be better than Nick Fortes to be the primary catcher. I'm all in on Agustin Ramirez, who has started very hot this year. Do you like what you're seeing?
I do, especially with how many catchers are struggling this year, whether it's JT Realmuto, your Ryan Jeffers of the world. If I would put a big bid on him. I mean, he's 7 for 10 for his first 3 games. He has 4 doubles, a home runs, 3 RBIs, couple walks. What is his OPS is a 2.150. I don't think he'll maintain that, Eric. I'll be honest, but I think he's
probably not.
But yeah, his defense is the thing he needs to improve. I mean, he came a part of that Jazz Chisholm trade, so he was a big name then, and man, what a week. I think I would rather spend more money on him because of his eligibility. And I think on Yahoo it's first base and catcher. I'm not exactly sure. I'll have to double check that, but definitely for catcher eligibility. I don't have a problem spending that on a catcher.
Yeah, I think anybody who needs a catcher, and you are right, it is catcher/first base on Yahoo. Anybody who needs a catcher in the deep leagues or 2 catcher leagues will absolutely be bidding on him. I mean, he's one of these guys where it's not just the teams who need a second catcher who should be putting bids on
True.
him, he's going to be better than a lot of ordinary, completely fine second catchers who you wouldn't cut for most guys. So there's going to be a real bidding war here.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you need a catcher, you should be going beyond 15%.
Yeah.
For Agustin Ramirez, I would say. And even if you don't, you should be considering it. He could really make a difference.
I'll be making a splash with him. I'll be putting some money on him for sure.
All right. Should we move on to your top priority ad of the week?
Let's do it. Top down. So Rhys Hoskins, Milwaukee first baseman. You may have heard of him. You're going to see a kind of a theme with my players. They're kind of like the old toys that the kids forgot about. But they're still pretty good. So Rhys Hoskins so far 88 plate appearances. He has 3 home runs, slashing 297, 398, 844. The biggest thing, Erik, his strikeout rate is down. It was 29% last year, and it's only 19% so far this year. So he's looking a lot more comfortable at the plate. He's walking 14% of the time. So if you are in an OBP league, I'm sure he's already been picked up. But if not, you definitely need to scoop him. And last year, he had an expected batting average of 202. This year, it's closer to, what is it? It's closer to 255. So his expecting batting average is up. And the last time his XBA was over 230, he hit 30 home runs for the Phillies in 2022. So when I see this big of a jump or decrease in strikeout rate and the power's there and he's seeing the ball well, then let's look at I want to look to his rest of season projections. And of course, using RotoWire, I'm a company man, even though I'm not part of the company. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, of course it is. But rest of season projections have him batting 231 with 24 home runs, which would give him 27 on the year, 71 RBIs, 55 runs, and 3 stolen bases. So the projections check out, and he has 6 games next week. 3 versus the Chicago White Sox, one of the worst starting staffs in all of baseball, and then 3 at home versus the Cardinals, who are middling at best. So in the short term, he has 2 solid matchups, and then in the long term, I think he's just fully healthy. He had that devastating knee injury. I think it took him all of last year to kind of get his head back on straight. He was playing for a new team in a new city, all those different human factors that we can't, there's nothing tangible there. But when you watch him play, he looks a lot more comfortable. So I believe Rhys Hoskins from here on out, he's going to have to be your first baseman.
Yeah. I think the narrative checks out there. I think that I and probably many others saw a guy in his age 32 season who 2 years ago missed the whole year with injury and last year wasn't very good and thought, well, you know what? This looks like not the guy I need anymore. This looks like somebody who's not the same player he was in his 20s now that he's 32. But I think your narrative at this point, where it was 1 year back from a major injury and now he's in a much better place, I think that narrative looks a lot better. The only thing to add here is that there's been a ton of first basemen who have emerged into fantasy relevance this season, you could say. The Tyler Soderstroms, the Spencer Torkelsons, even the Pavin Smiths, Jonathan Arandas, a ton of guys who have put themselves on the map in these shallow leagues. I wonder if the best play might be to try to flip one of them for some pitching and go get Rhys Hoskins, for example, if you want somebody who's doesn't have crazy upside, but is totally fine if you had managed to grab somebody else. I will move us from a former Philly to a current Philly. We're going to get a little anarchic with the positions here in the priority ads since you went mostly hitters. I'm already going to toss out a pitcher here. Ranger Suarez. He is due to make his season debut next week. Suarez has been dealing with back issues since early in camp, but he has made 3 rehab starts and he should be good to go. He only allowed 1 run in 12 innings on those rehab starts, struck out 16, walked just 3. So he looks rather ready. Ranger Suarez has been held on to in pretty much all of your deeper leagues, but if he has been dropped in a more aggressive league, I'd be putting real bids on him. And I think Ranger Suarez is usable even in these shallower leagues. I mean, since he's become a starter back in 2021, a 3.27 ERA, a 1.25 whip isn't as special, but he's somebody who consistently stays around league average in strikeout and walk rate while keeping the ball on the ground at an elevated clip. That works. He's a reliable, if unexciting. I would certainly go grab Ranger Suarez. There was a question that mentioned him in the chat earlier. So Dave here has Wisniewski and Eduardo Rodriguez wondering about dropping them for Brian Bello, who also recently came back from injury and is similar to Ranger Suarez in that he's not a high strikeout guy. Dave mentions he has Ranger as well, and I think I like Ranger Suarez better than everyone in that group. I like what Hayden Wisniewski's showing, so maybe not him, but I think Ranger Suarez is consistently underrated and is totally solid whenever he's healthy.
Yeah, if I had to rank them, Suarez, Wisniewski, Bello, Erod.
Yeah, that sounds fair to me. So, are you going to take us back to the offensive side of things with your next guy?
Well, what I did want to say about Rangers, just keep an eye out for how many pitches he goes in his next outing. They want him to get close to 90. He's on track for about 80 pitches. So if things go well, it looks like he will be making that start. But just keep an eye out. The Phillies, as you know, they haven't rushed him back. Like they're going very, very slow, and he's one of the he's waiting in the wings in Glarf. So yes, I cannot wait until he's back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
he will certainly help you out. Yeah, and maybe we'll find out when exactly he starts at the same time that we find out that Christopher Sanchez forearm news. I would bet the Phillies keeping everything somewhat undecided until they figure out what's going on there. But you've got a hitter for us.
All right, let's move on to Noelvi Marte. So Cincinnati Reds third baseman. So I had to update his stats even from last night because he had another great night. Current stats as of Friday night, 37 plate appearances with 2 home runs, 2 doubles, 7 runs, 10 RBI, slashing 353, 405, and 618. And when he was first called up, at least for me and what I saw, it looks like he was going to be a strong side platoon bat. You know, that was kind of my expectation. But as we're moving forward, it looks like he's playing every day. Heimer Candelario is kind of playing. He's playing part-time and just kind of filling in when he needs to. And then when I look at Marte and what he's done so far, so last year he struck out 31% of the time, and he just looked completely lost at the dish. This year it's around 11%. And when you look to his strikeout rates in the minors, it hovered somewhere around 18 to 22. So we stretch this out 3 months from now, I'd say he'd probably have a strikeout rate around 23, 24, maybe 25 at the most, but a far cry from the 31%. So I love seeing that. And what impressed me the most was the home run he hit off Edward Cabrera. Not only because it was 431 feet, but it came off the bat at 116.7 miles per hour, which is the 8th hardest hit ball in all of Major League Baseball this year. So the power is there. His speeds, he's also really fast. And when we hop down to his rest of season projections, he's batting, RotoWire has him batting 274 with 9 homers and 14 steals. If he is playing every day, you can boost those numbers up. I think 12, 13, maybe 15 home runs is not completely out of the question. I don't know if I would boost up his stolen bases anymore. But in your 12 team leagues that are a little bit deeper, I mean, he's definitely worth a start. And then next week they have 7 games. So the Reds have 4 at home versus the Cardinals, 2 righties, 2 lefties, and then versus Washington, they're going to be at home as well. So yeah, no, I didn't expect him to bounce back this quickly this year, but he's definitely Lucas Berry. He already picked him up in Glarf. As Lucas is on top of this type of stuff. But yeah, he looks great.
Yeah, I would agree. I would not have expected to be recommending Noelvi Marte, but we do have to remember he's quite young. He's just 23 years old. He debuted at age 21. And when guys are still not even close to 25, he's still 2 years away. That's very much still young enough that I'm going to forgive some slow starts, even with the added narrative wrinkles here of the PED suspension. I just think there's time for a guy to get back on track. If we thought he was really good when he was 18, chances are we weren't completely wrong and that there's still some development left to happen and that he has time to reach something close to what we thought he was going to be. It was mentioned here in the chat, there's, Heimer Candelario's got a real contract, and Christian Encarnacion Strand, he's going to come back soon. But the way I read this Red situation is whoever's playing well is going to play, and Marte's playing well right now. I think this is one of those situations where you don't want to double count the risk. The playing time risk and the performance risk in this case are the same thing. If the performance isn't there, the playing time won't be there. And if the performance is, I mean, maybe he'll sit a little bit, but if he's hitting like a starter, he's going to play.
And we've been pulling our hair out for the last 2-3 years trying to figure out the Reds infield. But what we do know is that if you are hitting, to your point, if you are playing well, you're going to continue to play.
Yeah, because unfortunately not enough of their guys have hit well at the same time. So it's actually sorted itself out pretty well, as we tend to see. I'm going to move us back to the mound here with another pitcher returning from a back injury next week, Tony Gonsolin, similar to Ranger Suarez. He, in his case, of course, hasn't pitched since 2023, also returning from elbow surgery. So we don't know exactly who Tony Gonsolin's going to be. And when we saw him in 2023, he wasn't very good, a 4.98 ERA. But over the 4 years before that, a 2.51 ERA and 0.99 whip. Those numbers were probably better than he deserved. He had a 2.23 BABIP. Although even in his last year, he had a 2.33 BABIP. I don't know if he really has some sort of BABIP suppression skills here. But I don't really care whether or not he does. Even if he does regress all the way to his ERA estimators, we're getting the 5th or 6th starter on the Dodgers, and I've been pretty consistent about this. You want whoever that is. You shouldn't bid a ton on him because he's going to lose the job to Tony Gonsolin in a month. But then you should pick up Tony Gonsolin, and then you should drop him in a month for Bobby Miller, and then you should drop him for Landon Knack. I think Tony Gonsolin absolutely still on the right side of the line here. And I think you should stash him this week in shallower leagues. And I think he's going to take some real bids in NFBC leagues next week after he does make his return. Would you rather have him or Ranger Suarez?
Ranger Suarez currently at the time.
Okay.
But that's not because I'm afraid that Gonsolin won't be able to pitch as much as possible. I think he'll, whatever he was expected to pitch at the beginning of the year, I think that's what he's going to live up to. And for those like myself who missed out on Dustin May, who got the news that he will make the rotation after I made a pick, or a pick or two.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. This isn't the best analysis, but if you have an LA Dodger starter at this point, and he's flashed upside, you pick him up. And you just see what happens.
Yep, that's all it takes. You're going to take us back into the infield dirt again?
Let's do it. So I'm hopping down to Andrew Vaughn. So are you seeing this, the Lost Toys kind of narrative where, where everyone's kind of forgot about these guys, and maybe rightfully so, especially on the south side of Chicago with that team. But if Andrew Vaughn didn't have bad luck, Erik, he'd have no luck at all at this current point. He's batting 160, but with a 239 XBA. He has a 161 BABIP when his career BABIP's around 285. So what is he doing right? He's still barreling the ball. He's barreling the ball 15% of the time. He's hitting every day, 4th in the lineup. So I believe it's just a matter of time, where this works itself out. As it gets warmer in Chicago and throughout the Midwest, I believe that those barrels will turn more into home runs. Looking into the rest of season projections, they have him batting 254 with 17 home runs, 63 RBI, 51 runs, everything like that. So quietly, he's actually been doing pretty well if you look under the hood. And then next week, he has 3 games at home versus Milwaukee, and then 3 games versus Houston. So Milwaukee's middling. The Houston's actually been a lot better than I thought they would against right-handed hitters. But Andrew Vaughn in your deepest leagues, I think he's probably already picked up, but I think he's worth a speculative ad. I do.
Yeah, another one hurt by the fact that first base is quite deep this year. We didn't expect it during draft season, but again, more guys have entered the fantasy relevant bucket this season, and maybe that's pushed Andrew Vaughn out of it, but still has enough that he can help in a lot of formats. I am going to continue our position anarchy and take us to the bullpen, where I think this is a pretty good week for speculating on setup men. There's a whole bunch of established closers who have something going on, even if they're not fully removed from the role yet. We talked about how Luke Weaver is probably worth a pickup with everything going on with Devin Williams, who I apparently wrote as David Williams in our notes here. That's interesting. He's been pitching like David Williams. I don't know who that is, but Uh, anyway, maybe he'll get back to Devin soon. But the reliever who I am recommending here is Porter Hodge, who is the next man up in the Cubs bullpen. And he earns a recommendation because Ryan Pressly is dealing with knee problems. He had his right knee drained on Tuesday. That doesn't sound great. And also means even if you're dealing with the fluid that's there, that getting your knee drained doesn't necessarily deal with the underlying problem. So we shouldn't necessarily assume that Pressly has just been fixed. He has not pitched since he had his knee drained, and his availability yesterday was supposedly to be determined. He did not end up needing to pitch. The Cubs won that one 4-0 over the Phillies. So with Pressly looking shaky, he also wasn't pitching all that well. He had a 2.45 ERA, but he had 6 walks against just 5 strikeouts in 11 innings. That's created an opportunity here for Porter Hodge, who we should mention does not have a good ERA, a 5.68 ERA, but of the 8 earned runs he's allowed in 12 2/3 innings this year, 6 of them came in that crazy Diamondbacks Cubs game where there were 10 runs in 1 inning. Now, I guess you don't get to do any sort of exchange rate thing and say those runs only count for half because everybody was scoring that day, but it feels a little bit different than most 5.68 ERAs is my point. Porter Hodge is a good pitcher. He can strike guys out, 15 strikeouts in 12 2/3 innings. He's got a little bit of a control problem, but hey, that's what you're getting in a setup man who looks like they could probably close but hasn't proven it yet. Porter Hodge exactly fits the bill there, and the guy in front of him is old, is shaky, and is hurt. So go get Porter Hodge now.
Completely agree.
You got another hitter for us, continuing our yo-yoing here?
Yeah, let's do it. Connor Norby, Miami third baseman. So this is the one where I'm like, I haven't seen, he hasn't shown it yet, but he's playing all the time. I think the Marlins are going to let him figure it out no matter what. So in 28 plate appearances so far, he's slashing 269, 321, 667. He doesn't have any home runs, but he does have 2 stolen bases. In Yahoo, he's second base and third base eligible, which is, pretty big. And yeah, he's one of the riskier pickups because he's striking out 32% of the time. So you don't love to see that. So I would consider this more of like, maybe you don't need him for next week, but keep an eye on him, or maybe, speculate and add him because he has a 12% barrel rate. He's going to be playing every day. And then we go to rest of season projections. I mean, they check out. They have him batting 233 with 15 home runs and 9 stolen bases. So that's useful. In any deep league, that's extremely useful. He has 6 games next week, 3 at the Dodgers, 3 at home versus the Athletics. So I'm not saying go get him right now. I picked him up in TGFBI a week ago for $1. I started him. He's doing fine. But just anytime there's someone playing every single day and there may be some potential upside, I'd keep an eye on him.
Yeah. Playing every day, still young-ish. I think that's interesting enough for sure. I'm going to move us back to the bullpen again with another setup man who is sitting behind a shaky, supposedly elite closer. That's Cade Smith in Cleveland, stuck behind Emmanuel Clase. Although, is he stuck? Clase struggled in the postseason last year. And maybe that should have been more of a warning sign because he's struggling to start the regular season this year. He gave up just 5 earned runs all of last year. He's already given up 9 this season. And it was discovered that there is a injury that he's dealing with, at least a minor one. Well, was he dealing with it the whole time? The way it's been phrased is that he experienced some shoulder discomfort after his most recent outing where he gave up 3 runs to the Pirates last Sunday. But with the way he's been pitching, I think it's fair to wonder, okay, was this under the surface all along? No move to the IL yet, but Cade Smith picked up a couple of saves earlier this week. And the thing about Cade Smith is that he's incredible. And he's basically worth rostering even if he's not getting saves. Not in your shallowest of leagues, but he's somebody I was picking up in, a keeper league before keepers locked because you could slip him in for $1 and know that he'd be your 9th best pitcher most weeks. He's one of those guys that I like having in any league that's 15 teams or deeper. You don't have to play him every week, But whenever you don't have enough starters where you like their matchups, just throw Cade Smith out there. That's the fallback plan. And the upside here is that Emmanuel Clase is not right, and Cade Smith just is the closer. We can't overstate how good he's been since he debuted last year. 183 ERA, 092 whip, 35% strikeout rate against a 6% walk rate. Nobody who strikes out that many batters walks this few. This is maybe the best reliever in baseball. I think it's too early to anoint him that title, but the way he's pitched for a year and a month, you could say Cade Smith is that good. And with Emmanuel Clase looking hurt and now actually is hurt, it's time to get Cade Smith. Would you have him as more of a priority than Porter Hodge and Luke Weaver? How do you rank those three?
Now that's a good question. As of Cade Smith's number one.
Okay.
Because even if he does, he takes half of the saves moving forward, save opportunities, he's going to really help you with your ratios. And you're not going to have to worry about, is he a good pitcher? He's a great pitcher. So, and if anyone who listens, obviously the Dr. Dave McDonald, he's been telling us since September, because as you know, I'm a Tigers fan and I watch him implode, the Kerry Carpenter home run, and
right.
You can't pitch that much as a relief pitcher. They relied on him way too much. He was close to 100 innings last year. And he came in this year and he looks just tired right off the bat. So I drafted Cade Smith in TGFBI. I drafted him in a couple other leagues, and I have him in all of my hold leagues. So I'm a big fan. And then second would be, I would do Hodge.
Okay.
I think Weaver's a better pitcher, but Hodge is going to have the spot. This is for relief pitching. You draft the if they're going to be if they're closing the games, you need them. And then third would be Luke Weaver, but not based on skill, just because Devin Williams is their closer.
Yeah, I think that seems fair. Do you want to wrap up our priority ads here with one final hitter?
Yes, Josh Smith. So nothing too shiny here with Josh Smith, but Corey Seager is hurt yet again. Soft tissue injury of the hamstring. So Josh Smith is going to be asked to fill in as a strong side platoon. So he'll play against all righties, maybe once in a while versus lefties. They brought in Nick Ahmed, so he'll probably hit against lefties most of the time. But Josh Smith so far, not only does he have third base and shortstop eligibility, but in the 63 plate appearances, he has a 281 XBA with 2 home runs, 3 stolen bases. He typically walks more than 10% of the time, and he doesn't strike out too much. So last year I picked him up as like a middle infield, corner infield option. He got me 13 home runs, 11 stolen bases, close to a 260 batting average, over 523 plate appearances, which is extremely useful. I think moving forward, it's possible he hits you 10 home runs, he gets you 10 more stolen bases. And in the short term, he has 7 games this week, 4 at home versus the Athletics, 3 at home versus Seattle. Now, I would say he plays 5 of those games because there's 2 left-handed pitchers for the Athletics. So if you're picking up Josh Smith for next week, expect 5 games. But with Corey Seager and his soft tissue injuries, you never know how that's going to work out. So I'd pick him up and be confident you're going to be playing him for at least a month or 2.
Yeah, I think Josh Smith maybe suffers from the fact that his name is pretty boring and generic. Yes, it doesn't get much more bland than Josh Smith, and that kind of fits his performance. What is his skill set? Baseball, he's pretty good at it. What position does he play? He plays the baseball positions, pretty much all of them. He's just kind of a baseball player who hits for a decent average and has some power and some speed and doesn't do anything notable, but he's actually better than you realize when you add up all of the bits together. So I think Josh Smith deserves a bit more attention. We're going to move on to the deep league players, but I want to mention a pitcher that neither of us threw on here, Will Vest. The accusation from the chat here is that you're trying to fab him this weekend. That's why you didn't mention him. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the reason neither of us put Will Vest on there is that he's a Tigers reliever. And do you really need a Tigers reliever? Because the guy who got the last save isn't going to be the guy who got the next one. Is Will Vest all that likely to get the next Tigers save, or is it going to be Tommy Kahnle? Is it going to be somebody else? What are you even doing in the Tigers pen?
I'm watching the Tigers games and not even thinking about bullpen usage. I'm staying completely away from it. That that's my expert analysis, is that there is no rhyme, there is no reason. The coach will pitch who he seems fit for that day.
Yeah, fair enough. So in a league of a certain depth, that means Will Vest clears the bar, but not a priority for me either. Let's move on to the deep league ads that are priorities for us. You've got a starter for us kicking off. Who do you got?
Ryan Gusto, Houston Astros starting pitcher. He's going to be at home versus my Detroit Tigers. And Gusto, over the last 22.2 innings, he has a 3.45 xERA with a 22 strikeout minus walk percentage, which is excellent. And what I find most interesting about him is that, number one, he throws the fastball 56% of the time, and it has an XBA of 194. So the fastball is solid fastball. But he also throws a sweeper, a changeup, a cutter, and a curveball all about 9-10% of the time. So unless you're getting a fastball, a hitter pretty much has no idea what's coming next. And I think that's in the short term. Long term, Spencer Arrietty's going to come back, and he's probably going to be optioned, after Arrietty comes back from a fractured thumb. But in the short term, I do like him as a streamer. I think that the teams haven't caught up to what he does just yet. And I really like that he has an out pitch versus lefties. On his changeup has a 37% whiff rate, which I don't often see too much against lefties with the changeup like that. So, and then just looking at so they're playing the Tigers. They have a 107 WRC plus versus righties this year. Kerry Carpenter has been a little banged up, another hamstring issue. He's starting today, but I'd keep an eye on it that, he may re-aggravate that injury. And, without him, I don't think there's a Tigers hitter that is feared. So, I believe Ryan Gusto for next week, he's going to be a good streamer. In the long term, Spencer Arrietty's going to make sure he gets optioned.
Yeah, maybe even Lance McCullers eventually getting healthy too could push Ryan Gusto away, but Gusto has held up probably more than I would have expected so far. My first deep league starter here is Jake Irvin, who I was surprised was available in over half of TGFBI leagues, which is what we use as our filter here. I noticed in Earth, he's not quite so widely available. I didn't check the main event. That might be the same there. But Jake Irvin, I think, is a classic deep league starting pitcher. I think he is incredibly boring, but he's going to keep his strikeout rate close enough to league average that the fact that he walks a below average, as in it doesn't walk very many batters, that's going to make up for the fact that he doesn't quite miss enough bats. And that was more or less the case last year, a 20% strikeout rate, but a 7% walk rate. The 4.41 ERA wasn't quite good enough, but some of the ERA estimators like XFIP had him down at 4.03. I'm not trying to sell you very hard on this guy. I'm just trying to say he's a competent back-end starter, and those guys tend to be snapped up in the deeper leagues. And this year, he does look a little bit better. Both the strikeout and walk rates are 1.2 points in the right direction, and that gives him a pretty respectable strikeout minus walk rate of 16% among qualified starters. That's 38th out of 86, so actually slightly better than the midway point. Right next to Ryan Pepio and David Peterson and Aaron Nola in those categories. So basically, Jake Irvin is completely fine. He's not going to walk a ton of guys, and that's why his whip is just 101 this year. You don't need to get excited about this guy, but he does need to be on somebody's roster, I think, in pretty much every league of at least 15 teams. Maybe the 12s can leave him alone, but I would stream him there too. I think Jake Irvin is fine and pitching pretty well right now, so he should be on somebody's team. You got another deep league guy for us?
I do. And just real quickly with Irving, the only thing I'm a little afraid of is he's going to be at the Phillies next week. So
true.
You may want to pick him and just pick him up and stash him for that week, unless you need to start him. But other than that, I completely agree. He's solid. He's a fine young man.
Yep, and the Phillies, it's a tough call. The Phillies have not been hitting great lately, but it is at the Phillies, and he's only Jake Irvin. So I guess maybe I would hope that I don't have to use him, but I think by including him here, I'm saying actually even there against the Phillies team that's not hitting great when it's still April, actually, I would consider him not completely exclude him. You got a reliever for us here.
Yeah, Abner Uribe from the Milwaukee Brewers. This is a speculative ad because I just don't believe Trevor McGill is going to last the entire season as the closer. The first thing, when it happened with McGill right off the bat, in spring training, he wasn't pitching in games. And there was no news of why he wasn't pitching in games, but you did hear these rumors, he's on the backfield, he's facing hitters, all this different type of stuff, but you didn't see him actually in the spring training game. So that was a red flag right off the bat. And now that he is pitching, as good as he can, he has a 6.15 xERA. And apparently there's something wrong with his knee, or his knee hurts and he felt like he needed to get an MRI. The MRI came back clean. And I guess he didn't believe it because he got a second opinion on it, which I think is you don't usually see when someone like, oh, it's fine. And the hitter's like, or the player's like, are you sure? I don't think it's fine.
Right.
Because of those reasons, and because Abner Uribe looks pretty good too. In 10 innings so far this year, he's striking out 25% of the batters. He's only given up one home run with the 2.99 xERA. So I think Matty Wood picked him up last week or 2 weeks ago in Glarf and then dropped him. But I think, if you put $5 on him and just see, it's possible for the last, 3-4 months of the season, he is your closer. So I would pick up Abner Uribe if you can.
Yeah, I think Abner Uribe is certainly interesting. He's been sometimes pitching earlier in games in a high leverage situation in like the 6th or 7th, but I just checked the leverage index. I use the GMLI is the stat. If you ever run Fangraphs, they have some advanced leverage index stuff. That one is the importance of the game situation when guys enter the game. Abner Uribe is actually third in the Brewers bullpen. Trevor McGill second, and it's Nick Mears who has been number one. So Nick Mears also mentioned in the chat here, maybe another Brewers reliever to speculate on. Even Craig Yoho just got the call up recently and was a minor league reliever people were talking about, but he's not currently being used in high leverage. So probably just keep him as a name to know for the later half of the year. I've got another Brewer pitcher here, and it's actually a stash, technically. Logan Henderson. You have the rare opportunity here to, in an NFBC league where you can't normally grab a minor leaguer, because Henderson was called up, made one start, and then was sent back down, and also given when he made that start. He was called up all the way last Tuesday. It was a very weird situation. So he was sitting in the majors from Tuesday until Sunday, and then he finally got to make his start, and he wasn't sent down after that start. So some people like me in Tout Wars picked him up on Sunday, and then he was optioned Monday. So the point here is he's going to be in your player pool because he's already been up, and usually in NFBC you don't get the opportunity necessarily to stash a prospect. I think you could grab Logan Henderson, and I think that he should return soon enough that he might be worth it. I think I would look to stash him for a couple weeks because Logan Henderson has really good minor league numbers in every category except for innings pitched. Excellent strikeout and walk numbers every year of the minors, 35-9 his first 2 years. And then last year, 33% strikeout rate against a 5% walk rate. Problem is the innings totals have never been higher than 81 1/3. So with a guy like that, why are you wasting your time in the minors, especially when the back of your rotation has been rotating through nobodies all year? I mean, right now, Quinn Priester and Chad Patrick are your 4 and 5. I guess with Brandon Woodruff coming back soon, there's even less space here, but I'm pretty sure that Logan Henderson can beat out those guys. And Patrick did not have a great start his last time out. 2 of his last 3 starts, he hasn't even reached 5 innings. He's actually only reached 5 innings twice all year. I think there's spots open for a Brewers starter who's actually good. And I think Logan Henderson, by his minor league numbers, looks like he's actually good. Not just his minor league numbers. His start was excellent. Struck out 9, walked just 1, gave up 1 run on 3 hits in 6 innings in his major league debut. So I think Logan Henderson's good. I think he should return within the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think what will actually happen is you will cut him in 2 weeks and he'll return in 3. And I'm sorry, but I think Logan Henderson is worth a look if you can afford, not to need him right away.
I agree with everything.
All right, you got another reliever for us here.
Yes, and this one, so it's Matt Strahm from the Phillies, relief pitcher. Now, this is more of a season-long strategy than you need to get Matt Strahm for next week. And we've kind of already talked about it with all of these pitcher injuries and everything that goes on with starting pitcher these days. It's okay sometimes to look at your waiver wire when you need somebody to stream and not pick a starting pitcher. Don't be afraid to ignore a two-step from a bad pitcher or a pitcher that with a bad matchup. Like, don't be afraid to say, you know what, I'm going to go get an elite relief pitcher who's going to pitch maybe 3 times, 2-3 times this week. Get me 4, 5, 6 strikeouts, and don't destroy. It doesn't destroy your ratios because. And this is where I break where I'm in a Glarf. So going into last week, I was 8th in Glarf, doing well. Everything looked good. I was in the middle of every category you could be. Everything's going fine. Then I picked up a man named Easton Lucas.
Oof.
So you've heard about being Gombered. I have been Easton Lucas, and because I sat there on that Monday deciding, I was like, do I go Orion Kettering? Who do I? No, I'll go with the upside. Long story short. If there's an elite, if there's a good relief pitcher with good matchups for the week, don't be afraid to ignore the starting pitchers. Don't stream somebody because they have 2 starts or because you think they're going to do good in a matchup. Bad pitchers are just bad all the time, so don't be afraid to pick up Matt Strahm. Strahm's been great in 11 innings so far. He's striking out 33% of the batters with a 1.59 ERA and a 0.97 WHIP. He has 1 win. He has as many saves as Duran from the Twins as well. So just with 1. And so, yeah, it's 3 games versus the Nationals, 3 versus the Diamondbacks. There's a lot of lefties in the Nationals lineup. So I would expect him to pitch at least 1, probably 2 of those games, depending on usage. So nothing with the relief pitchers real quick. Look at their usage for Saturday and Sunday. If they don't pitch those days, feel even more confident they're going to pitch as much the next week as well.
Yeah, and I really like you mentioning Matt Strahm. He is the top option for this type of reliever. If you just want somebody who's great at ratios and maybe a save, but you're really getting him for the ratios. Since Matt Strahm joined the Phillies ahead of the 2023 season, he has a 31.9% strikeout rate and a 5.4% walk rate. Paul Skeens, for his career, has the exact same 31.9% strikeout rate and a walk rate a 1/10 of a point higher, 5.5%. So if you like Paul Skeens, just pick up Matt Strahm. Let's move on to the deep league hitters, where I will get things started with Jordan Beck. Who is he actually good? I don't know yet. I don't know if the Rockies know either. Jordan Beck made their opening day roster and barely made it over a week before he was sent down. In 9 games, he hit 150 and he was gone. And then he was back less than 2 weeks later, and he's got 8 hits in 6 games, including 5 homers. 5 homers across his last 3 games, in fact, for Jordan Beck. He's still striking out far too much in these 6 games. It's a 35% strikeout rate, and that's why I'm far from convinced that Jordan Beck is good now. But he fits the profile of a lot of Rockies outfielders we've seen, which is that he strikes out too much, but might have enough power for it to work, especially given that he's got some speed as well. I'm not really changing my underlying tune too much on Jordan Beck here, but I want any Rocky who's playing regularly and is at least kind of interesting. Jordan Beck clears all those bars right now, and the Rockies are playing a bunch of home games the next couple of weeks, so I think you want Jordan Beck. I don't know how I'd rank him compared to, Mickey Moniak and Kyle Farmer and all the other fringy Rockies that I mentioned most weeks here, but Jordan Beck's back on the good list, I think, right?
I mean, he led off last night against the lefty, against Reagan. He batted 8th. The game before that, against a righty, he batted 5th. The game before that, yeah. So yeah, he's playing nearly every single day. He's going to be playing in Colorado. He's worth it in a deep league. It's always worth that shot. I think he had 2 home runs last night. Or 1.
Yep. Back-to-back 2 homer games for Jordan Beck. So I wouldn't expect that to continue, but guess you got to grab him now for these home games at least. You've got a deep league hitter up for us next?
I do. A young man named Tim Tawa, second base for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, this is a short-term ad. Cade Marte will be back eventually. So when he is, he would probably be optioned. But in like a 15-team league, he's starting every day. So he'll be good for like a middle infield utility position. Tawa, in his first 45 plate appearances, has a 273 XBA with 4 home runs and 2 steals. He currently has a 1 OPS, and so over 1,000 OPS. I don't think that one's gonna stay there, but it's always good to see a rookie come in and look comfortable. And he's hitting every day in the 9th spot. And ever since the National League got rid of the DH, there's been a revolution of what the 9th spot actually should be, where the worst hitter now is like in your 7th spot or 8th spot, and the 9th hitter is really setting the table for the top of the lineup. So the Diamondbacks have one of the best offenses in baseball. Tawa's walking 15% of the time. He has decent speed. So, if he gets on base, Corbin Carroll, Naylor, everyone that's behind him. So this week he has 3 games at the Mets and 3 games at the Phillies. And I think he's worth a small bid, if you need somebody for the next week or 2.
Yeah, I was not sure he was going to be worth it when he was first called up, but he's performed well enough that he certainly is worth a look. My next guy on here is a Tiger, and you didn't put him on here, so I'm assuming I'm wrong to have done so, but it's Jace Young, who did not make Detroit's opening day roster, but got the call earlier this week. Hasn't done anything in 2 games other than take a couple walks and score 1 run. It looks like he's not going to start against lefties, but if he's starting against righties, at least in the short term, and Jace Young is not a highly right prospect, but he was a real prospect, and he did hit pretty well in the minors. If you look at 19 games this year at AAA and 872 OPS, in 91 games at AAA last year at 831 OPS, 14 homers in a little bit over half a season. So not somebody who's going to set the world on fire, but somebody who looks like he's got a competent bat and is playing on the large side of a platoon right now. To me, that looks deserving of deep league rostership. Is there something I'm missing here with Jace Young, or is he fine?
He's fine. I think I'm just too close to the team. The reason why I don't have Casey Mize or Spencer Torkelson on any teams. I watch this team too much. Jace Young, I have not seen any type of power at all. He's striking out, I think, 30 or more % of the time. So as of right now, I'm okay without Jace Young. But yeah, if he starts playing every single day, he's young enough to where he can make strides quickly. I think he could be a viable stream.
All right, and I like this final guy you put on here. He's somebody who just missed the cut for me last week. Tell me about Erik Wagaman.
Yeah, so Erik Wagaman, first and third base eligibility for the Miami Marlins. In 79 plate appearances so far, he has a 565 X-slug, and he's only striking out 14% of the time. And during that span, 3 home runs with a stolen base. So the performance is there. Now, is he playing enough? He's played the last 7 games in a row, mostly hitting either third in the lineup versus righties or second in the lineup versus lefties. His splits are fine, so there's nothing too big there. So with the Miami Marlins over the last, I don't know, maybe forever, there's always players there playing every single day. Their names are kind of interchangeable, but as of right now, I think Erik Wagaman is worth a look. Next week, he has 3 games at the Dodgers and 3 games home versus the Athletics.
Yeah, making good contact, just a 16% strikeout rate this season, hitting the ball hard. A lot of the underlying numbers look pretty interesting for Erik Wagaman. Maybe at age 27 breakout of some level there. My final guy, I am also not too excited about this guy, but hey, he's the last guy in the deep league section for a reason. Cody Clemens. He's somebody who I believe is 0% owned in TGFBI and over at Yahoo, and I would not be picking him up in a shallower league, but in some of these deeper leagues, Cody Clemens was acquired by the Twins from the Phillies after being DFA'd, and the reason I'm including him here is because of that Luke Keyshaw injury we talked about earlier. Keyshaw going down with a broken forearm, and also Willie Castro being placed on the IL Thursday with an oblique strain. Bunch of injuries in Minnesota right now, and I'm curious to see whether or not the Clemens acquisition was with an eye towards him actually playing against righties. The Twins really like platooning. Are they really going to keep a lefty on the bench who doesn't start against righties? And if he does get the playing time, he's not going to do a ton with it, but he's shown some power. Limited playing time for the Phillies last year. He hit 5 homers in 120 plate appearances, only hit 219, doesn't walk. So he's not really a good enough player to play regularly, but he had 14 homers in 68 AAA games, also stole 6 bases. Mostly, I think he could give you a little bit of power if I'm right in suspecting that the Twins acquired him to put him on the large side of a platoon. An ex-Tiger here. Are you happy with how that trade worked out? What was this? The Matt Vierling? Was this the Gregory Soto? And
Yep. And yeah, up until Vierling, separating his shoulder, it was, it's been a great trade for the Detroit Tigers. Now, for Clemens, I mean, he's probably one of those players that if he, let's say you're in an NFBC league, so there's the Monday through Thursday and the Friday through Saturday, or Friday through Sunday locks. Maybe in one of those sections, if he has a couple good matchups, I think he'd be a fine streamer. But everything that I've seen, the power's middling. He strikes out kind of a lot. He does have good bat speed, but it's not really translating into barrels. So I really don't know what to expect. But I mean, that's what happens when a guy only has 6 at bats so far this year. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, that's fair. Should we throw on real quick? Zach DeZenzo was just mentioned in the chat. Say we should have him as a deep league hitter. He wasn't playing all that much for most of the year, but starts in 3 of the last 4 games for the Astros. And he has a 2-hit day and a 3-hit day in there. Maybe if the playing time is coming around, Zach DeZenzo, he's somebody who had some prospect appeal. I could see maybe throwing a little bit at him in a deeper league. Are you interested at all?
15.4 barrel percentage. Yeah, I mean, as of right now, no. None of it hasn't translated into a home run. He has 2 extra base hits out of those 90 or out of those 27 plate appearances. As of now, no, but yeah, things could change in a week.
Yeah. Keep an eye on him, see if the playing time does remain. And, if you can sneak him for $1 and you don't need that spot for anything else, sure. Makes sense to me. That's going to wrap up today's show, though. Thank you very much for everybody who hung out in the chat. Thanks a lot for Marty filling in for Ryan this week. Marty, you got anything going on that right now you want to plug?
No, just appreciate being on the show. I've taken a hiatus from all the writing and all the podcasting, so it's been I needed extra time to get my Glarp team out of 14th place. So, yeah. But no, thanks as always. It's truly an honor to be on this show, and good luck to everyone next week.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good luck climbing up the standings, making up for getting Easton Lucas in Glarp. Looking forward to competing with you all year. That'll be it for today's show here on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Vivid Seats.